I'm considering adding to my Vagrant setup script. I use Vagrant to set up my development environment. I'm considering adding there a Docker index server. Docker index server is actually shipped as a Docker container, and Docker index server can, I don't know if it can act as a proxy, but I could at least download once the image that I want and store it in my own index server. So the next time that my local Docker asks for, say, the same image again because I'm rebuilding, I can already have my image indexed locally and just pull it locally, much like a caching proxy, but without all the wonderful features of a caching proxy. It might be one of the features that we look into adding to our all-singing, all-dancing package caching mechanism as we go forward with Open Crowbar. There was a third thing that I had run into in creating my development environment, but it's escaping me right now. It was just some simple network configurations. Docker requires some bridge network configurations, and using them inside a VirtualBox with Vagrant was a little challenging, but I got through that, and I'd be willing to walk through the chef recipes that I'm using in Vagrant to start up our VirtualBox.
I'm kind of curious why you were having to re-download Docker images.
It goes over HTTPS. And so my caching proxy that I have on my host OS wasn't caching them. They needed to be re-downloaded when I tested a fresh build of my development environment from my Vagrant system.
Okay, that kind of defeats some of the purpose of using Docker if you're running your complete development environment in Vagrant, though.
Yes and no. If I'm running Windows as my host OS, then I need VirtualBox. And I can either set up VirtualBox and the whole development environment inside VirtualBox by hand, or I could use Vagrant to do it.
Right.
If I use Vagrant to do it, then ostensibly I just have to type Vagrant up, and it does everything I needed to do.
Right, but why would you be typing Vagrant up instead of just continuing to reuse the development environment that you have until you absolutely have to test something new?
Right. I'm looking for that eventuality of absolutely having to test something new.
Okay. I mean, the other thing is I wouldn't necessarily have your Vagrant up scripts try to precede the Docker images, mostly because the Docker admin command will pull the images down on demand.
Mm-hmm. Oh, they definitely do pull them down on demand.
Yeah.
I'm preceding to let people work offline, if that's at all possible. I have pretty severe bandwidth constraints.
With the way we're working right now, it's really not possible for them to work completely offline.
Right.
Because I mean the scripts that we use to the Docker admin script, the chef recipe that actually does the bootstrapping and checking to see if things are up to date. It actually wants to go out to the internet and fetch all the latest junk anyways, right now.
Right. Yeah. And any apt-get update command is going to be updated at the proxy anyway. So you're still at least getting a fresh package. So no, I'm not putting a ton of effort into the Vagrant stuff. It just happens to be that I'm 90% of the way there already. And when when I've made changes and had challenges with proxies and stuff, or with, I decided to, since it was in my sprint story to test, the best way to test my development, that my development environment actually would work over and over again, would be to completely rebuild it and make sure it works. And it did. But your point is really well taken that we are focusing on an online work mode, and the offline work modes are just a secondary way of going about things for us, secondary priority.
Yeah, for now at least.
Yeah. So that's what I've been up to. Those are some of the challenges that I faced, and what I got done. My work is checked in. Anybody else wanna review? And did I just hear a little baby?
That was my daughter.
So,
She's watching Mario videos and laughing.
well, if folks don't want to go over any other sprint accomplishments or challenges, any major check-ins? My check-ins were really, really minor this past sprint.
Well, I'm running into some fun challenges. So it turns out that writing code that is actually parallel in Rails is kind of hard.
Yeah, Ruby is not well known for its threading or its concurrency.
Yeah. So I've been going through and messing around with all the database level transaction and locking stuff that we have available to us. And turns out that every race condition I fix exposes 2 more. It's pretty awesome.
Do you think you'll get to a final expansion point where they'll begin contracting?
Hopefully. I mean, I've gotten to the point where I can boot 6 nodes simultaneously, and everything in the database works properly, but there's some stuff in the run system that I need to straighten out. In some places, runs are just being dropped for some reason that I can't really discern from looking at the logs right now.
Mm-hmm. So it looks like another sprint of playing whack-a-mole on the simultaneous node bring-up.
Yeah, just managing all the locking so that everything looks consistent all the time.
Is it confined to node bring-up, or would it occur for, say, workload deployment?
It could occur for workload deployments. Just it turns out if you try to do a whole bunch of stuff at the same time, that the transaction levels we were using on the node rel graph can be somewhat non-deterministic. And so I'm making that stuff deterministic, and it's being loads of fun.
How are you going about it? With lots of flags, semaphores, or what tools do you have?
Well, step 1 is to add more transactions and set the default transaction isolation level to serializable. And then fix up all the transactions so that that is needed by the transaction is loaded by the transaction and automatically read here. That's what I have done right now, but that exposed a whole bunch of hidden race conditions whenever I did it. I'm having to go back through and fix everything up.
It'd be nice if parallel programming in a language that's supported as its base, parallel or concurrency.
Wouldn't it, though?
Any other major check-ins or folks blocked by stuff that need a little airing out? I don't think we're going to get any external folks working on this. I figured I'd mention the potential upcoming meetup at Chef NYC, where I'd be reviewing with the community how we're doing attribute injection and how the annealer works, and why we landed on an orchestration algorithm like stimulated annealing to manage our directed graph, and the implementation, not the implementation, but the coming to reality onto a box of the directed graph, to allow deterministic and non-deterministic states to exist within the same application. Much easier to grok is attribute injection and writing chef recipes and cookbooks that are reusable, and how we go about using our API to inject the proper attributes into Crowbar, the Crowbar API to manage those attributes, and how they end up in chef recipes on the nodes, making things happen. The Chef NYC meetup group usually gets about 50 people. Last time I was there, about a month and a half, 2 months ago, beginning of the year, there was a demo of the recently open sourced Gigaspaces orchestration engine. That was really interesting. Turns out they're rewriting the whole thing in Python after the first step in Java, but it's completely open source, and its target is sort of full life cycle connectivity between monitoring and operations automation, and allowing the automation of node bring up based on app requirement heuristics. So you'll get this doesn't happen on bare metal. This is all AWS or cloud, where you're getting a medium-sized or a large image if you request a database and it matches certain parameters for the application, and then it'll monitor them and reconfigure them as load goes up and down. And they have a simple Boolean DSL for describing the different conditions necessary in order to take actions. They've got a cute little GUI, and as we spoke afterwards, they're interested in collaborating with us. We went for correctness in the algorithm we chose, and left out the wide work of overall integration. It'll be really interesting to hear how folks respond to the two different techniques. I'm hoping this will be much more interesting to chefs who are working in code, and get into some discussions about well-written cookbooks. That could potentially happen the end of next week. I want to get it on my sprint planning stuff to schedule me a little time during the week to get it all prepared. That is in expectation of ChefConf, which I'm registered for. I'll be the lone person sort of semi-representing Dell at ChefConf, where I'm going to do a birds of a feather about attribute injection, and another birds of a feather about orchestration and simulated annealing, in order to attract some attention to the project and also to set out some of our ideas. I'm going a little early and I'm staying a little late for the hack day, and I'm going a little early to sneak in some of the training sessions. Anybody else going to be out in the area who might want to meet up in San Francisco? I would be very happy to talk to you here or offline. Also, PuppetConf was announced just recently. Don't know where it's happening yet. It's in actually in September. in San Francisco the end of September, which might also be something that we should look forward to attending. As we are starting to build we're considering how we're going to go about building and starting to build a jig for Puppet. There's also Puppet training, advanced Puppet Systems Administration training in New York City next week. And I'm going to be trying to be attending that. Again, if there's New York City folks who want to meet up around that, that would be super cool. And we could see what's new in Puppet and how folks are solving difficult problems with Puppet and integrating it into larger systems. Puppet Labs already has a few different orchestration tools in their toolkit. So it'll be interesting to see how those different orchestration tools are taking control of the Puppet agent and making it do its bidding. That's all I got. If other folks have stuff they'd love to add, please chime in. Or just let me know if I'm alone on this call.
No, I just have nothing to add.
Oh, I managed to articulate all of existence in 27 minutes. That's awesome. So, there's a couple OpenStack meetups. There's a Boston OpenStack meetup coming this week or next week. I got the announcements in my emails. And there's one happening down in Austin, I understand. I imagine some Crowbarbarians will be attending that. On deck, they have it's today, actually, in Austin, at the Tech Ranch. You'll be able to attend an OpenStack meetup without Rob Hirschfeld, which would be probably a first. Tonight, and it's going to be Rick Ashford from Suze, which will be talking about using multiple different hypervisors in an enterprise environment with OpenStack. So get out there and give Rick from Suze give him hell and eat free pizza. So I guess we'll wrap up the call. If there's no other stuff that folks want to chime in on, what's going on in the Open Crowbar world. Thanks a lot for joining. And next planning is in 2 weeks. Hopefully we'll have some more exciting and fun announcements as we plan our sprint within Dell tomorrow and come back to the community with our deliverables for the next 2 weeks. Thanks a lot for calling in, and we'll see you next time.